I want to start off just with a little bit of a word association game, okay? So this is like the interactive time. I just want to try this out. I want to say a word, and then you just respond with whatever comes to mind, okay? We'll just see how this goes, and hopefully it makes sense later. But the first word, let's go with New York City. Apple. Say a little. I'm deaf in one ear. Maybe that one. Rats. Yes. Good. Okay. Let's go. Well, we went big city, New York City. Okay, let's go with Greenville. Maid-Rights. Me. Yes. Annie Oakley. Yes. It's good. The fair. Yep. No, not just the fair. The Great Dark County Fair. Yes. Okay. Pizza. That's an easy one. Pizza. Cheese, pepperoni, sausage. Did anybody say pineapple? Come on now. Let's go. Okay. This one might be touchy. So be kind. Politics. Ooh, okay. You know, we'll skip that one. A couple more. Let's go with Cincinnati Reds. Horrible. Fun. Hot dog. Rookies. Yes. Okay, good. I don't know if you want to answer this one out loud, but maybe we'll try it. What about, let's go, the church. Family. Welcome. Growing. Good. Or Christian. Follower. Walk. Let me tell you this survey that I read. The Barna just did a study, and it was a word association study, and this was for people, non-church people, so people who are not involved in church in any way. And as they were doing this word association study, they said church. And the words that were said, thought of, was bigoted, judgmental, hypocritical, sheltered, too political. Now, those are words that a lot of times people associate with the church when they hear that word. This morning, I want to look at what would Jesus say if he was playing the word association game? If he was doing the word association game and we were saying words and we said church, or Christian, what would Jesus say? How would he describe the church? In fact, this morning, we're going to continue our series. We're going to continue this series of the Sermon on the Mount. And this sermon so far, Jesus, called his disciples. Actually, there's a crowd that we find that there's this crowd following Jesus. And he actually walks up, it says he ascends to the top of the mountain or up on closer to the top of the mountain, and his disciples, those who had decided to go from crowd to following Jesus, follows Jesus up to this mountain. He sits down, he begins to teach, he begins this sermon. In the last several weeks, we've looked at how he started the sermon, which is with this blessedness, the blessed life. We call it the Beatitudes, which actually comes from the Latin word of blessedness. And Jesus starts off saying, I want to tell you what it looks like to be blessed. And he actually turns all these expectations, turns the world's expectations upside down. And he starts saying things like, blessed are those who are poor in spirit, or blessed are those who realize they need God. Blessed are those who are meek, who want to make the changes meek. Blessed are those who want God, desire God above everything, or want to be right with God. And then also are merciful. And he says all these things, and he ends with like what we talked about last week. He ends with, blessed are those who are persecuted makes it personal. He says, blessed are you. He looks at his disciples, he looks at his followers, and he says, blessed are you when you're persecuted because of me. And a lot of times this next passage, we completely separate it from the Beatitudes. But as we look at this passage, as we examine this passage, we realize that it has to be connected with the Beatitudes. In fact, the rest of this sermon, the rest of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount actually goes back to those Beatitudes, the blessedness, how he started his sermon. Right after he says, blessed are you when people insult you and persecute you and falsely accuse you of different things. And he says, what I want you to do is I want you to rejoice when that happens. He says, rejoice when you're getting persecuted, because Matthew 5, verse 13. Rejoice when you're persecuted, because, he says, you are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its saltiness, then how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled by men. You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden, neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before men, that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven. I believe that if Jesus was asked to describe the church, if he was playing that word association game, I think one of the ways that he would describe it, one of the first ways that Jesus describes the church right here, is salt and light. He said, what is the church? He would say it's salt and light. Not that we always live like this or give this expression, but the first words Jesus would say is salt and light. You are the salt and light. This word that I love this in verse 13, is you remember he's talking to his followers, he's talking to those who took that step, that have realized their need for them. And if you have taken that step, he says this, he says, you. This you is not an individual you. It's not an individual language. It includes you as an individual, but it's a communal you. This is you folks. If Jesus was, you folks, or if you're from the South, right, it's y'all, right? Or if you're from, I don't know, the East Coast, it's yous guys. Or it is, do I have my Pittsburgh friends in here? I got a lot of Pittsburgh friends that watch. In Pittsburgh, it's yins. Yes. So this is Jesus standing up, and he starts and he talks about, blessed are you when you're persecuted. That's actually a more of a singular you. And then he broadens it and he says, yins are salt, y'all are light. He's talking to the collective church. He's talking to all of us. He's talking to all of his followers. And I love this. I love this because he identifies them as salt and light. He doesn't sit down, he doesn't look at them and say, when I'm done with you, when I'm all done and everything is done, when I'm done with you, then you'll become salt and light. He doesn't say, you have salt and you have light, now use it. And he doesn't even say, you must be salt. You must be light. Jesus in this passage looks at his followers, those who have given their life to him, those who have said, you know what, I am all in, I want to follow Jesus. And he says, anyone who follows me, anyone who is all in, anyone who is living this blessed life, anyone who calls himself a disciple of mine, and anyone who surrenders their life to me, you are salt. And you are light. That's what you are. I love that he does this. This is at the beginning of his ministry. He's just gathering people. This is the beginning of his ministry. He doesn't wait. He doesn't wait until his disciples or his followers go out and start healing people like they do later. He doesn't wait until he sends them out to claim the good news to the poor. And he doesn't wait until, they're showing the power of Jesus in their life. He does this before anything. Before any of that, he says, you are salt. You are light. It's almost as if he's looking at this crowd, this gathering of disciples, and he looks at their potential. It's almost like he looks into their life and he sees who they are called to be. He sees who we are. In fact, it doesn't just happen there. He does it for us too. It's amazing. Jesus looks at you. He looks at me. He looks at us. And if we are following him, if we have given our life, he says this. He says, right here, right now, you are salt. You are light. He says, there is something inside of you. There's something inside that I just want to pull out. I want to show you. You are the salt of this world. You are the light of this world. And he speaks into our lives. And this is such good news because I don't know about you, but sometimes I don't always feel like that. Sometimes I don't always feel like I'm light or salt. Sometimes we struggle. Sometimes there's some hard times, and we're going through hard times, and it's like, do I really have a purpose in this world? Am I really making a difference? I don't know if you've ever been at that moment where you look around, you're like, am I really making a difference? And Jesus looks at you and he says, yes, because you are the light. You are the salt. If we lose a job or we're out of work or I know there's so much, we find so much fulfillment in that, and people, sometimes it's like, well, what's the point? What is my point? And so you are the light, you are the salt. I have a friend on Facebook, and he's about my age, so he's in his low 40s. And he posted on Facebook, and he's moving again. And, his entire adult life, basically since college, he's just moved around and done odd jobs, and he's moving again. And this time he's moving, he's like, look, I really don't have the finances to be able to move. I need help. He's like, I can't believe that I'm at this point in my life. I'm 40 years old, and I still need help. In fact, there's one point he said, you know what, I thought things would be different at this point in my life. I thought I would be making a bigger difference. I don't know if you've been at that point, but Jesus looks at you and he says this. He says, I know you are salt and you are light. When we're lonely, and we ask, is there anything that I can even offer this world? And Jesus says, there's so much in you right now. When you follow me, there's so much in you, and I want to bring it out because you are salt and you are light. I know I've repeated that over and over, but I just want you to hear that. I want you to let Jesus speak that into your life, because that's what he's doing with his disciples right here. The followers are right there. He just talked about living for him. And remember these disciples that he's talking to. I love the group of people that are following him. These aren't just amazing people. This is a ragtag group of people that have kind of just gathered around. They're not all that in a bag of chips, right? I had someone say, they were actually a crunched up bag of chips with too much air in them. These people that are following him, some are doctors and some are religious people, some are tax collectors, some are fishermen, some are prostitutes. I mean, this is just a group of people. And he is speaking into their lives, and he says to this group, he says, look, I want you to hear that. And I think he wants us to hear that this morning. He wants you to know that you are special. There is something about you, and he says, when you follow me, you become light into this world, and you become salt. This morning, I don't want to look at how to be light and salt, because you know what? He actually just talked about how to be light and salt. If you want to know how to be that light and salt, if you want to know really how to do that, just read the verses before this. I want to take a few minutes and just look at why. Why salt? Why did Jesus choose salt? Why did he say, you are the salt of the earth? Why salt? You know, the beautiful thing about salt, and the thing that we all know is this: salt actually alters everything that it touches in a very subtle way. Salt alters everything it touches in a very subtle way. You know, there are three main uses for salt in Jesus' time. When he was preaching this message, they used salt for three different reasons. And Jesus doesn't tell us which reason he is referring to. So instead of trying to pick the one that I think he was referring to, I'm just going to look at all three reasons. He says, you know, in Jesus' time, the salt was used for three different reasons. One's to flavor food. Another one was to preserve food. And another reason they used salt was for healing purposes. Is used as medicine. So look at this. First, salt was used to flavor food. I mean, we know this. It's the same in our culture. We love using salt. In fact, many a times our doctors will say, you know, you need to use a little less salt. But if you want food to taste good, a lot of times it just needs a little bit of salt. It's one of the three main things in cooking is salt. The other day we made a meal, and I don't remember what it was. I'm pretty sure I cooked it. But when we started eating it, and Stacy was like, this just doesn't have a lot of flavor. I'm like, well, I did everything I was supposed to. And she's like, well, did you put salt in it before you cooked it? There's some kind of hamburger thing. And I'm like, oh, no. Put salt on it, tasted so much better. But salt flavors things. If you want to bring out flavor, you put salt on it. Jesus says, if you are following me, you bring flavor to this world. When you live for Jesus, people can taste the difference. When we are living for Jesus, if you are a follower of Christ, the world is better when you are there. It is better when you are there. It's better when you are in the picture because of your relationship with Jesus. He says, you are salt. You bring flavor to this world. You're a peacemaker, is what he said earlier, right? You bring peace as salt to this world. You bring love as salt. You are meek as salt. You make changes the right way. You know, you bring flavor. The world is so much better because of you. It tastes so much better. Have you ever had anyone say this? Boy, you know what? I wish there were more people like you. I don't know if you've ever had that. Have you ever said that? Have you ever said that to someone where someone's just really nice or amazing or helpful or something, and you're just like, you know what? I wish the world had more people like you. You know what you're saying right there? You're saying, you know what? We need more of your salt. We need more Drews in this world, or Kevins, or pick a name. We need more of you. Because you are salt. The world tastes better. Salt was used as medicine too. It was used as medicine on wounds to heal a wound. When I was younger, my family would every once in a while, we'd go to Florida as a vacation, and we would drive down there. Well, one year, I don't remember how old I was probably about 12 or 13 years old. We were getting ready to go to Florida. Well, right before we go to Florida, we had to stop at my cousin's house. I don't remember why we stopped there. Mom and Dad had to get something, or maybe they were watching our dog. But we were dropping it off, and my cousins had a trampoline in the backyard. It was one of those trampolines that was before the netting, before all the safety features, where the big, springs and, kids would be bouncing off and, breaking bones. The good old days. We got there, my mom and dad said, don't go out and jump on the trampoline. So what did I do? I got my cousins, we started jumping on the trampoline. We're like, don't worry, we're not going to get hurt. And they said, you better not hurt yourself before we go to Florida, or we won't go. Jumping on the trampoline, and I don't know, I was doing a backflip or something silly, and I slipped in between the springs with my arm. The spring kind of cut up my arm, went up into my arm. I pulled the spring out, and there was just blood everywhere, and I'm just bleeding everywhere. And the only thing I tell my cousins is, don't tell my parents. So they run, they sneak out a big thing of paper towels. I put it over my arm. I get in the back of our station wagon, because, we rode in the back of the station wagon back then without seatbelts. My parents get in, they say, you guys all ready to go? I'm like, yep. Get to Florida, and I am just bleeding everywhere. My parents have no idea. Every time they show, I'm covering up because I want to go to Florida. The end of the story happens right when we get to Florida. The first thing we do is, what's the first thing you do when you get to the Florida? You go to the beach, right? You go swimming. So I jump out of our station wagon, we run to the beach, and I jump in salt water with a big cut on my arm. Ouch. There were tears. I didn't cry when I got hurt, but when I hit that salt water, oh my goodness, I screamed like, I screamed like a girl is what I was going to say. I started crying. It hurt so bad, and my parents were like, what happened? And then I told them what happened. I got in trouble. But you know what happened to that cut? It healed. That salt water healed my cut like that. It was amazing. It hurt like crazy. But it healed it. You are the salt. You heal things. When we follow Jesus, we bring healing into relationships that need healing. We bring our prayers to God so that He can heal physical healing. We bring healing into the brokenness of people's lives. You are salt. You heal. They also use salt to preserve things, to stop decay. They didn't have refrigerators back then, right? There was no refrigerators. Right now, when we buy meat, we stick it in the refrigerator, we stick it in the freezer, and it'll last a while. Back then, there wasn't that, so the only way they could preserve meat was they would take salt, and they would cake salt onto the meat. They would either do it with a dry salt or a wet salt preserve. It didn't, it's two different ways to do it. And they would preserve it. And what's amazing is a salt-preserved piece of meat can last up to 5 years. That's how long it stops the decay of that meat. Jesus looks at you, looks at us and says, you know what? You stop the decay. You stop the decay of society. You stop the evil in this world. You stop the injustice and the hurts and the pains. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. We looked at that. Blessed are those who let their hearts break for what breaks the heart of God, and then brings upon that change. And that change isn't brought upon by force, it's brought upon by meekness and humbleness. See, the church is called, we are called as the church to bring about change. To help those that have injustice. When we see an injustice, when we see things that are wrong with this world, God says, you're the salt, you're the one that's going to heal that. You're the one that's going to stop that decay. What's amazing, if you look at the history of the church, there are definitely some bad times in the history of the church of the world. But there is so much good that has come through the church. The end of slavery came because of Christ followers in America. Women's rights were brought about because of the church. Religious freedom. Hospitals were founded because of the church. Universities, education, children's rights, baby rights. There's so much good that has been brought through the church. Because we are salt. We stop the decay. We preserve. You are salt. And then he says this. He says, you are salt. And then he says, you are light. You are light. You eliminate darkness. I love this. With light, basically cast out darkness. No one ever says turn on the dark, right? No one has ever said it's always turn off the light. The light comes into darkness and it gets rid of it. We live in a fallen, dark world. The sin is this darkness. And you are called to cast out that darkness. You are called to shine that light. You are the light. When I get up in the middle of the night, to whatever happens, Stacy and I, we love our bedroom like pitch black. We don't want, we have the darkening curtains. I want no light. I want it to be so dark. The problem is, though, if I have to get up in the middle of the night, okay, I'm going to confess something right now. My bedroom is not always clean. Sometimes there's things, hampers laying in the middle of the floor, a vacuum, a fan. Sometimes there's like toys or a dog that's just laying in the middle of my floor. Many times I get up in the middle of the night and it's dark and I'm trying to wander around and, hitting my toe. My bed has this it's like the end of my bed is like right here. I think I've got permanent bruises from walking and going boom and hitting it. So when I get up, what do? I grab my cell phone, which is on the floor somewhere. Don't ask why. It's plugged in, charging on the floor. I get it. And then I push the power button and I can see. It's amazing how your screen of your cell phone, just a little bit of light in pure darkness can shine. So when I'm walking around the bedroom in the middle of the night or in the morning, if I get up before, Stacy, I don't want to wake her up. So I sneak around and I shine my flashlight so that I can see where I'm going, so I can get rid of the darkness. God says, you are the light. You shine for God. Now what's amazing is this would have shocked the listeners at this time. His disciples that were listening at this time, they would have been shocked for them to be called the light. Because up until Jesus, you know what? It was Jerusalem. Jerusalem was the light. That was the city on a hill. He says the city on a hill isn't hidden. That's a reference to Jerusalem. In fact, in Isaiah, it says this. Isaiah was talking to Jerusalem. It says, arise, Jerusalem, let your light shine for all to see. For the glory of the Lord rises to shine on you. Darkness as black as night covers the nations of the earth, but the glory of the Lord rises and appears over you. All the nations will come to your light. Mighty kings will come to see your radiance. That was Isaiah. That was God talking to the city of Jerusalem. And now Jesus is here and he says, I'm going to change it. It's not Jerusalem that's a city on a hill. It's not Jerusalem that's going to shine the light of God to all the nations in the world. It is you. You are now the city on a hill. You are now the one that is going to shine a light so that all the nations can be seen. The glory of the Lord is now going to rise and appear in you. Jesus says, I am the light of the world. Jesus is the ultimate light, and his light reflects when we follow him. His light reflects through us. Actually, I don't even know if reflection is the right word, because the Holy Spirit comes inside of us. It projects out of us. God's light projects out of us. And when we show love, and we show forgiveness, and we show righteousness and mercy, and we follow Jesus, that light shines bright into the darkness. And when you're around people, people can see God. They can see how life is supposed to be, how we are to treat the least of these. And they look and they see that light shining and they say, wow, that person just lights up a room. Wow. There's something different about that. I want that light. You are salt. You are light. You are going to change those around you. You are going to shine Jesus' light in the darkness. Jesus says this in 13. He continues. He says, you are the salt of the earth, but, he says this, he says, but if the salt loses its saltiness, well, then how can it be made salty again? It's no longer good for anything except just to be thrown out and trampled by men. He says, but if it loses its saltiness, you're salt, but if it loses saltiness, well, then it's going to get thrown out. It's no good anymore. Here's the amazing thing about salt. Salt actually does not lose its saltiness. Salt can never become unsalty. In Jesus' time, though, the salt, there was good salt that was salty, and then there was bad salt, and actually what it was impure salt. There was impure salt that was mixed with dirt, other elements, whatever it was, and this salt would actually would wash away the good salt in that mixture. If it was impure salt, the good salt would actually wash away, and the substance, there's this white substance that looked like salt that was left, but was pointless. It's actually just a bunch of dirt. And Jesus is saying, you are pure salt. But there's this, if this impure salt, if there's impure salt, is pointless. Blessed are the pure in heart. When we live that blessed life and we have that pure heart, he says, you are the salt. But when we live as the world, when we let the world penetrate our heart, when our hearts are impure, when we let the world's flavor in us and not the other way around, then our saltiness becomes worthless. In fact, our saltiness might even just ruin the food. If we allow the world to mix in with our life, the world to flavor us, then we don't stop the decay in around us. We don't heal. We don't add flavor. We do the opposite. Here's what Jesus is saying, is that you're going to make a difference. You are salt. You are going to make a difference. But what difference are you going to make? What kind of salt are you going to be? He says, you are salt. You're going to make a difference. Then he says, you are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. He says, no one lights a light and then hides it. Light is meant to be seen. I get up in the middle of the night and I get my little phone out, and I'm trying to walk around without hitting my legs on the bed or tripping over the dog or kicking something. When Stacy gets up in the middle of the night, or when Stacy gets up before I do in the morning, you know what she does? She walks over to something called a light switch and goes, click! You know the difference between a little cell phone and all the poof, light? I mean, I'm up. She just turns it on and just gets ready, and it's great. Jesus says, look, you are to be like Stacy. Don't be like Drew, just a little tiny cell phone trying to hide this light. Be like Stacy. Turn on the light. Let it shine. Don't try to hide it. Don't try to sneak around. Shine with the light that God has given you. Because I am the light inside of you. Just let that shine. There is no how-to. There is no to-do list on that. Just let His light shine through you. And I love how He ends. In the same way, let your light shine before men, that they may see your good deeds. But it doesn't stop with that. They may see your good deeds and glorify who? Your Father in heaven. We are the salt, we are the light, not for our glory, for God's glory. Ask our